Next on AM 1480 WLEA, the Newsmaker Show. Here's Ryan O'Neill.
The Thursday, September 13th primary is getting closer and closer. We want to have all the guests in that we can who are in the primary. So our guest today is Tompkins County Democrat Amanda Kirchgessner. Amanda, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Brian.
Well, Amanda, so many questions. Let's start out with bio information. Tell us about yourself, background, education, what got you interested in politics?
Sure. So I was born and bred in the 58th District. I grew up in Enfield, New York, with a mother who was very, very active on the Democratic Committee. And I grew up going to the polls with them when they were getting the counts at the end of the night. And it was just in my blood. My grandfather would often talk about voting for FDR 4 times. That was what I knew as a child. And
Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the conversation of politics is very heavy in some families. Sounds like yours was one of those.
Yeah, I mean, my grandfather was very proud to have come up and out of the Depression and come out on top. You know, he enlisted during World War II. He was hit by a car, which prevented him from serving overseas. He swears it saved his life. And when he was discharged from the service, he got a union job. He married his wife. They had 5 kids. They own their own home. I mean, he was living the American dream in every sense, and he gave a lot of credit to FDR for implementing the policies needed in order to recover from the Great Depression. Now,
seeing the bio on your website, amandaserving.us, and it says you organized a People's Caucus uniting local community groups in collaboration with county legislators. Tell us about that.
Sure. That was part of my efforts with Decarcerate Tompkins County, which is a group that organized to fight jail expansion, with the understanding that the more beds you create in jails, the more people wind up in jails. And we recognize that a lot of the reason for people committing crime is related to issues with housing, addiction, poverty. There's a lot of other social factors that aren't really accounted for. So we were in the process of introducing ourselves to a new legislator in Tompkins County, Shauna Black, and our efforts got several other legislators at the same table with several other active community members who cared about issues from workers' rights to housing affordability to homelessness and food insecurity. And it's kind of on hold right now because I've been on the campaign trail and I haven't really been able to pull that effort together.
Understandably so. You're running for state senate, and you've got the primary coming up with Michael LaSalle, and he'll be on a later show. Amanda Kirchgessner, first of all, you talked about having an interest in, I guess I'd say, over-incarceration in the prison system. What got you interested in law enforcement?
Well, I mean, what really pulled me into all of this was tax abatements. Noticing that tax abatements were happening in our community, and large businesses and corporations can apply for tax abatement if they're bringing certain development to an area. And the tax abatements were being handed out for housing in Tompkins County predominantly. And we recognize that a good paying job is often the solution to a life of crime and poverty. If somebody has meaningful employment that affords them to live, they're not going to go to jail. No, their kids are going to go to college. And that was probably what brought me into the criminal justice angle and looking at how we could do more to really address the needs of communities in a holistic way, because it's never as simple as one issue. There's a multitude of issues facing us.
Now you have let's see, you're vice chair of the Tompkins County Employee Federal Credit Union, treasurer of the Jacksonville Community Association, and what do you do for a living?
I've been a professional server for most of my adult life. I've worked in restaurants. I've been a bartender and waitress for over 17 years now, or in some fashion.
It's interesting to see in a lot of local races, a lot of people with blue-collar backgrounds do get into these political races. Amanda, tell us, what made you want to get into the race against State Senator Tom O'Mara?
Because working people don't have a voice in Albany, and nobody in Albany, none of them, no Republican, no Democrat, really seems to be raising up the concerns of struggling working people. I mean, my friends, I don't have any children myself, but my friends make choices between paying their electric bill or buying their kids Christmas presents. And I'm of the impression that any adult who's working 40 hours a week or more, they should not be poor. They shouldn't have to be making these hard compromises. And I've had to choose between, buying food or paying my mortgage. It's not an easy place for people to be. I did graduate from Tompkins Cortland Community College, and I got my associate's diploma back in 2005. I didn't get into the program of my choice out of college, so I was like, I'll work. I'll save some money, and I'm going to go back to school, because that's what you do. That's how I was always raised. But what happened was in 2008, the recession hit. My friends were graduating from college, and they were getting jobs catering for me. It was so backwards that my friends who had taken on the student debt couldn't find jobs teaching. And I just noticed that the system was really broken. And it doesn't seem right. In America, which is the wealthiest country in the world, or New York State, which is one of the wealthiest states in the country.
Now, to go through the list of issues and where you stand on those, and I'm thinking here Common Core, the SAFE Act, wind energy, the whole list of issues that come up in state government these days. Starting out with wind energy, because there's no lack of wind projects around here. Your thoughts on wind?
I mean, I think if the wind is blowing, it makes sense to utilize it as an energy source. I think it means jobs for steel workers and electricians. I think decentralizing our grid, our energy grid, is one of the most intelligent things we can do in order to have communities that are sufficient, in case of a major electrical grid catastrophe. They do, there's a lot of speculation about how these systems could be hacked, and having solar projects and wind projects across the state that serve small areas would be very much to our benefit.
How about the SAFE Act? Now, I asked the question, it's kind of a done deal. People like State Senator Kathy Young have said, honestly, will we ever repeal it completely? Probably not, but we can get parts of it repealed, and the parts, especially the parts that are the biggest problems, say, to law enforcement and whatnot. Did you have any thoughts on the SAFE Act?
The SAFE Act, to me, is one of the most frustrating pieces of legislation in New York State's history. I think nothing like that should be passed so quickly. That passed in 24 hours. I don't know if you've read it personally. It's 39 pages of single-space legal jargon that it has no common sense behind it.
Critics say it was written by people who really didn't know weapons too well.
Yes, you could definitely say that. I've spoken to many responsible gun owners on the trail, and they all recognize the fact is we don't want guns in the hands of criminals. But when you change the law and make law-abiding citizens criminals for weapons that they possess, that is a problem. And we don't need to be so foolish. And I think that was a miscarriage of government because it was just pushed through in such a hurry. Nobody read that. It never would have passed, not in the form that it did, if people had actually read the legislation. And that to me is that attention to detail that I intend to bring to the State House.
Talking with Amanda Kirchgessner, a Tompkins County Democrat who will be on the ballot on the Thursday, September 13th primary. Amanda, another issue that I always go over with the state candidates especially is Common Core. Your thoughts there?
I don't think any child is common, personally. I'm for the elimination of standardized testing at the state level. I don't think it helps us educate our children for the jobs of the future. Our kids are our most precious resource. You know, it's right up there with our water, if you ask me. And I feel that holding children to one standard isn't in their best interest. Or the teachers. Teachers are often found they spend hours and hours, days and days teaching children how to take a test when they could be talking about wind energy or farming or exploring the interests of the children. I think that there are a lot of opportunities to expand our education, but we also need to change what our definition of education is. We're not teaching people to be critical thinkers anymore. We're teaching them how to do what we want them to do. And what we need right now is a very active citizenry who questions what the government does and challenges the government to work in its best interests. And I'd really like to see our educational system creating and helping to shape the minds of future representatives and future leaders and future inventors. Common Core doesn't do that.
Agricultural issues. We kind of touched on that in the last answer that you just gave, but your thoughts on agriculture and the way that New York State treats its farmers?
Our farmers are struggling right now, and I'll be completely honest. Climate change is going to be one of the most pressing concerns facing agriculture moving forward. I think that water management is going to be a massive, a huge issue that we have to deal with. And I think our farmers who work so closely with the land are at the forefront of having the knowledge that we need to begin to address some of these issues. They know where the infrastructure needs to be developed and shored up in order to preserve our arable land. We really need to be thinking about how we will produce food if the climate, if the temperature does go up a few degrees. We like to think that that's not a big deal, but when our winters start getting shorter and our summers start getting longer and hotter, that could really impact the agricultural climate. And I'm willing to we need to start having those conversations now, because we need to have a plan for how we're going to address that moving into the future.
And last issue before we go to the break, which we're late on, but we're having a very interesting conversation here with Tompkins County Democrat Amanda Kirchgessner. Taxes.
They're too high. Property taxes are way too high. And property taxes are not the best way to fund an economy, fund a government. I think that we really need to be focused on income taxes that fairly tax wealthy corporations and wealthy people. Bernie Sanders often talked about the 1%. they have most of the wealth, which means their wealth should be covering a lot of the necessary features of our infrastructure, whether it be the roads or the schools. I think passage of the New York Health Act is evidence to reduce our property taxes substantially if the local counties choose to pass it off as such. I know that across the 58th district, I believe it's about 52% of our property tax dollars are going to fund Medicaid, and passage of the New York Health Act would eliminate the Medicaid portion of the county tax burden, which means that's money that counties could either spend locally on infrastructure repairs they need to do, or they could eliminate that portion of their property taxes.
Talking today on the Newsmaker show with Tompkins County Democrat Amanda Kirchgessner. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, I'm going to ask Amanda, how would you describe yourself as a Democrat? Would you describe yourself as a Cuomo Democrat, which is maybe more of a mainstream Democrat, or Main Street Democrat, I should say, or do you find yourself supporting more the likes of a Cynthia Nixon or a Bernie Sanders, as you mentioned in an answer a few minutes ago? Stay with us here on Newsmaker.
St. James Hospital is committed to providing excellent care close to home. That's why we've added 2 new general surgeons, Dr. Brian Watkins and Dr. Adam Bassler. They're both passionate about caring for people in communities like Cornell, and they bring expertise in the latest techniques like minimally invasive surgery. Dr. Brian Watkins and Dr. Adam Bassler, they're helping St. James provide the best care in the best place, close to home. St. James Hospital, welcome to a healthy new day, part of UR Medicine.
The National Weather Service has issued heat advisory for the region. In fact, from noon today through 8 p.m. this evening. Partial sun today. There's the threat of an isolated shower or thunderstorm this afternoon. Highs 90 to 95. Clouds night. Scattered showers are possible. Lows near 70. Scattered showers tomorrow. They'll end by late in the day. Highs will be 80 to 85 tomorrow afternoon. Tomorrow night, partly to mostly cloudy, close to 60. Partly sunny, cooler Friday with a high around 75. I'm meteorologist Rob Carolan.
We're back on Newsmaker with Tompkins County Democrat Amanda Kirchgessner. Amanda, her website, amandaserving.us or US. Is that, how do you say that, us or US?
I say amandaserving.us.
Okay. Amanda, the question that I talked about that we'd come back to, how would you describe your political views and your vision?
I think Bernie Sanders, I wouldn't be doing this if Bernie Sanders didn't run in 2016. He made a lot of sense, and he started saying things that people have been seeing for a really long time, and our politicians have not been saying, but he's been saying it for years. Bernie just didn't have that platform. And I think recognizing how much wealth has been extracted from the middle class and the lower middle class is really paramount at this point in time. Working people used to be okay. You used to be able to live on minimum wage. And I mean, as evidence, like, I'm from Tompkins County. My grandfather grew up in the city of Ithaca, which is facing an affordable housing crisis like you would not believe right now. But his mother and her second husband, who was a union painter, right? So a union painter and a woman who took in laundry, owned a beautiful home on the main street in downtown Ithaca. That could not happen today. It's outside of anybody's reality. And that was just 2 short generations ago for my or 3 short generations ago for my family. And I think
it would be safe to say you support the minimum wage increase and tuition-free college.
At state schools, absolutely. I'm of the mind that anybody who works 40 hours a week should not be poor. We need to earn enough to live. I think that we need to be very clever and creative in how we come up with these solutions, because right now there are a lot of single parents in particular who would be affected by a minimum wage increase because they lose benefits that are currently allowing them to provide for their children. if the wages increased. So we need to make sure that we are absolutely decisive in how we go about doing this. I know it will be very hard for small businesses to compete with businesses out of state if New York State businesses are made to pay a higher minimum wage. You know, you can't compete with someone in Missouri paying $7.25 an hour if you're made to pay $15 in New York. So what can we do at the state level in order to help small businesses do that? That's a very real concern for me. But I think that anybody who's working needs to have a certain standard of living. That's why we work. We work so we can live. It's very much an American idea, and I embrace it fully, and I understand the challenges are real.
Down to the last couple of minutes with Tompkins County Democrat State Senate candidate who's running in the September 13th primary for the Tom O'Mara seat in the state Senate, Amanda Kirchgessner. Amanda, any final thoughts? Or was there anything I didn't cover that you'd like to bring up?
I've really enjoyed talking with you. Thank you. I feel that working people deserve a voice in the political process. I am a very unconventional candidate in that most people who earn less than $30,000 a year don't run for state senate, and I'm doing it because we need to. We need to get off the sidelines, and we need to dive in. You know, I'm tired of big money running our political system. I'm tired of corporations giving thousands and thousands of dollars to interests that do not care one lick about people like you and me, to be perfectly honest. They don't care if we struggle to pay our bills. The bank will foreclose on my home first chance it gets, you know, just like they would anybody else's. And then it'll sit there empty for years before somebody else has the opportunity to live in it. It's not right. And I don't know how this happened in America, but I want to go to Albany because I will fight every day for people who are living this, and it needs to be central to the conversation, and it's not right now.
Amanda Kirchgessner, Tompkins County Democrat, her website, amandaserving.us.
On Facebook at Amanda Serving the People.
And do you do Twitter and all the other things, Instagram?
I do most of my own social media. I try my best to keep up with it, but Amanda Serving the People on Facebook will give people a really good idea of what I'm about.
And the last name is spelled Kirchgessner. If you're doing a Google search.
It rolls off the tongue. My dad gave it to me. I'm kind of attached.
Amanda, thank you so much for joining us today here on Newsmaker.
Thank you for having me.
AM 1480, WLEA Hornell.